Estate Raise the Realm is a strategic board game that combines worker placement, resource management, and deck building. You're going to need to be good at all of those if you're going to win, and I'm going to show you how here on Legendary Tactics. Speaking broadly, there are a few paths to victory in Estate. Choosing your path is something that you must do early, as there isn't a lot of opportunity in the 5 rounds of the game to pivot. Family Secrets, the endgame scoring card you begin the game with, should be a good guide, as well as taking a look at your hand, the available era events, and the available cards on the market. The hardest part about choosing a path is the sheer size of the Estate card deck. Planning any strategy around getting the right cards is difficult, as they may not even turn up in the game, and even if they do, they may not be in your hand. Even with exceptional card draw, there is still going to be some luck involved, so it is better to plan using what you have rather than what you might possibly get down the road. The first possible path to victory is a production strategy. It is the most obvious and easy to grasp. This involves ramping up your production and resource generation as high and as quickly as possible to buy cards to your estate without even following a specific theme necessarily. The second is a royal strategy. This is based on building upon cards like Royal Court and Royal Guard to add points and take advantage of any synergies the royal cards provide. A variant of this is the noble strategy, which uses noble citizens in combination with the monarch. The third is a dungeoning strategy. This is an easy choice if you are the warden, but it can make sense if you have the right cards available to you at the beginning of the game, like the assassin, dungeon, or sword for hire. Card draw is going to be the most important with this approach. And finally, there's a specialist niche strategy. This can take many forms, but could involve focusing on specific scoring cards like actors and monks, resource stacking on cards, a storage strategy, or focusing on one resource like wood in combination with a card like the charcoal burner. Obviously, the earlier a player gets going on one of these, the tactical decisions become much clearer. In coming up with strategies for this game, one quickly realizes that knowledge of the deck is key. Players should know what cards are in the deck and how many of each there are if they really want to attain a high level of play. Therefore, let's have a quick word about each type of card. There are a lot of them, so you will have to bear with me. I have divided them into a few different categories. Number 1. Game End and Era End cards. Actors are cheap, but only worth 1 VP each, unless you get multiple actors in your estate, which allows them to stack. These can be used any time, even late in the game, for some quick and easy points if the cards are available. It's a high-risk, low-reward niche strategy, but at least it helps with card draw. Farmers give you victory points for collecting grain, and VPs at game end for farms. This can be great if you can get these down as early as possible to maximize their potential, preferably with farms already in hand. Farms are plentiful in the deck with 10 available, and this fits well with a production strategy. Larders allow players to store 1 copy of a resource at era end. This fits with a niche scoring strategy and is best played in the first era or 2, otherwise it may not be worth it. Monarch is key to maximizing the noble strategy. It gives 1 VP per noble citizen, which is a potential maximum of 34 VPs per card. The noble citizen cards are reasonably plentiful and can be combined with the royal palace to great effect. It can be played any time, so you can afford to play it late if need be. Monks are more expensive than actors, but are worth 2 VP each, which stack with other monks to create some decent victory points. These are playable any time, so even late in the game is fine. Like actors, however, it can be hard to build a strategy around them, as you can't count on them turning up in your hand or in the market. Royal Consort is a decent card, allowing a player to play 1 free citizen after using 4 workers. This one will take some planning to maximize the benefit. Play it as early as possible, and plan during your turn for the free card. Every era, tactical decisions will need to be made around this one, as players will need to make sure to have a citizen in hand by the end of the turn. It will lead to a more random build, but can work really well with a royal strategy and a bit of luck. Royal Court provides 1 VP per royal card to a maximum of 16 VPs. Since it is an endgame scoring card, you can play it any time, but don't plan on getting this one, as there are only 2 in the deck. If you get 1 or even both cards early enough, you can build a royal strategy around it. Storehouse provides 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 VPs for having 3 or 6 or 9 or 12 resources in your supply, and is a great card in combination with a production strategy, which will usually leave you at the end of the game with plenty of resources to spare. You can play this any time, even late in the game. Thieves' Guild allows a player to steal a resource from an opponent's card to this card. It is not really that effective, but it can marginally impact another player's strategy. Without knowing the cards your opponents have in hand, it is hard to know what resource to steal. It is expensive for what it is. Production cards are next. Production cards are best played early as their value decreases as the game goes on until they become effectively useless to play in the 5th era, except to provide a few victory points. Assassin allows you to dungeon a citizen under it from your hand or estate and draw 1 card. This is situational but works well with a dungeoning strategy and can steer you that direction if it arrives early enough in the game. Charcoal Burner allows a player to discard 3 wood, and for each wood discarded, the player receives a VP. This is a great card. There are 6 forests and 2 royal forests in the deck, and era progress actions can make this very strong as a VP engine. It steers players towards a niche production strategy with a one-sided approach. Day Laborer gives players a temporary worker for the current era. This is a weak card as it only saves 2 grain over simply adding a permanent worker. Additionally, it takes an action to play initially and an action to activate each time. It can be okay late in the game as part of a production action that activates multiple cards if you haven't added both of your permanent workers yet. Dungeon is perfect for the dungeoning strategy, as it allows a player to dungeon a card from a player's hand or estate for 1 VP per card, or a player can play an already dungeoned card at cost. This can be a strong card especially if multiple dungeons are in play, in combination with strong card draw and production actions. Farms simply produce 1 grain, which can be especially useful in combination with the farmer card, but also gives you more grain to buy permanent workers and citizens. Forests simply produce 1 wood, which is especially useful with cards that can utilize wood, like the Charcoal Burner. Forges allow players to exchange 1 iron for 2 other resources that are not iron. This is an okay card as it feeds other strategies and adds decent flexibility, but this is not a high priority card as there are likely other ways to get the resources you need for the same production action. Harbor is an interesting card. Players give up 3 resources to an opponent and score 1 VP per resource given. This can be strong with a production strategy, but keep in mind that this will help feed your opponent's strategy, making it more of a wash. But it can be good to give resources that your opponent already has a lot of, lessening the negative impact. Merchant allows a player to copy 1 production action on another player's estate once per round. This is highly variable, however. It can be near useless or quite valuable depending on the production cards your opponents have. Quarry allows players to produce 1 stone. Please note that there are only 4 in the deck. Scout allows players to draw 2 cards and keep 1. This is useful to mill the deck for cards you are looking for, which, funnily enough, works especially well with the royal strategy, where you are looking for as many royal cards as you can. Smelter gives players 1 iron with a production action. There are only 4 of these cards in the deck as well. Sword for Hire, when activated, allows a player to draw a card from the estate card deck. If the gold value is more than or equal to 3, the player can dungeon or keep the card. Otherwise, the card must be discarded. This is really too random to be useful as it is very situational and really only good early, but it can be a supplement to a dungeoning strategy. Thief allows a player to take 1 resource or gold from another person's supply, but can only steal from a player once per era. This is most useful if played early enough, and is not that great late game because of the 1 use per era restriction. Town Square is a limited card. If you have at least 2 resources stored on cards, get 2 resources of your choice. This card is not that great as it is expensive and only works with a storage strategy, but it does give at least some flexibility with your resources. Some cards provide passive abilities which can be used without taking an action. The Auction House allows the exchange of 2 of the same resource for 1 of another. It's not a great deal, it is limited in scope and it is expensive, but at least it is a passive ability. Barn Cat is interesting. For 1, 2, 3, or 4 farms in play on all estates, get 2, 2, 3, or 4 resources of your choice. This is an amazing card at a low price if anyone, including yourself, is following a farm-specific or even a generic production strategy. Granary is good for a storage strategy. Once per era when receiving grain, store a grain on this card. Granary is not a good card, but it can work with Town Square or if you have a family secret that synergizes well with it. Judge is solid. Once per turn when you dungeon a card, you get 1 resource of your choice. It can be a great card, though a little expensive. It does provide 5 VPs plus matches well with someone already following a dungeoning strategy. Lumberyard is of limited use. Once per era, when a player receives wood, they can store 1 wood on this card. It's not that great unless you have Town Square in play or a useful family secret, but it will work with a storage strategy, especially if played early. Monastery is situationally useful, reducing the cost of playing monks by 1 less grain. If monks turn up and you are placing them, this card can be useful, but only if played early. The VPs provided by the card are also quite good. Mortician will give resources. For 1, 3, 5, or 7 dungeoned cards on all estates, a player will get 1, 2, 3, or 4 resources. This is better played in the mid to late game when there are hopefully many cards dungeoned, but this is situational. Smuggler's Den works so that when taking a resource, 1 copy of that resource is placed on Smuggler's Den. This can work okay if you're following a storage strategy and have Town Square or a useful family secret. Treasury Overseer gives the bonus that once per era, when another player receives gold, receive 1 gold, and this gold is stored on this card. The maximum value the card will provide is 5 VPs, but only if played early, so it is of limited use in and of itself. That said, gold is gold. Woodcutter is of limited use. It says that when playing a construction, a player may replace another required resource with 1 wood. This is generally only good if following a wood production strategy, otherwise is not really that useful at all. Finally, there are cards that activate when played. Apprentices' Quarters gain a permanent worker that can be used next era, which is great if played early but useless if played late, and the VPs of the card are not even very good for the cost. Architect allows that for 1, 3, 5, or 7 constructions in your estate, get 1, 2, 3, or 4 resources. Contrary to what the card implies, this is best played after a lot of constructions are already built for some last-minute resources and some decent VPs. Castle allows a player to play a citizen for free into their estate. This is an expensive card, but the cost is offset by the free action and the cost savings on the most expensive citizen you have in hand. This is best for a royal or noble strategy, and has the bonus of some impressive VPs for the cost. City Watch gives players an opportunity to draw 3 cards to hand, and it blocks the thief. This card is potentially useful, but bland and situational. Guildhall allows a player to gain a permanent worker starting next era. If you can afford it, this card can give you a worker without needing wheat, and great VPs, but it should be played in the early or mid-game to maximize its effectiveness. Guild President provides VPs for citizens. To be precise, for 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9 citizens in all estates, including the player's own, it provides 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 VPs that are stored on the card. This card can be of great value, but will likely be best played in Era 5. Innkeep allows the player to place 1 grain resource on the next 2 era cards and receive them when that era begins. Players can also discard Innkeep to lower the cost of another card by 1. This is not a great card, but if you have to play it in the early game, get your grain to help you buy your permanent workers, and then exchange it as soon as possible. Knight allows a player to dungeon up to 4 citizens in hand or in their estate for 1 gold or resource on a Knight card. This is a nice flexible card for storage or dungeoning strategies, and makes for a strong power play in the 5th era. Necromancer lets a player look through the estate card discard pile and select 1 citizen to play at normal cost. This can be useful, but it is situational, and is best used in Era 5 for both the VPs and to find a good card from the biggest possible discard pile. Place of Worship allows a player to draw 4 estate cards, keep 1, discard 2, and play 1 in your estate for 1 less resource, or discard a card if it can't be played. This has good VPs, but the card ability is below average. It might work in an instance where you are desperately searching for a specific card. Plow works like this. For each farm in play in all estates, get 1 grain, which can be pretty good, though it depends. This is obviously better as the game goes on, especially if someone is playing a farming strategy in the game. Royal Ambassador allows a player to place 1 resource on each remaining era space, and at the start of each era to get the resource. This is obviously better played early, as it is useless in Era 5 except as a source of victory points. Royal Forest is an intriguing one. A player can store 5 wood on this card, and when producing can take 2 wood off it or replenish 3 wood on the card, up to a maximum of 5. Note that this does not count as resources in one's personal supply. This is okay, but can really shine with a wood production niche strategy. Royal Guard is key for the noble strategy. For 1, 3, 5, or 7 noble citizens in play in your estate, get 1, 2, 3, or 4 gold and store it on this card. This is a late game only card. Royal Heir moves a deployed worker to another action. It is very flexible and reasonably priced, costing only a little more than a day laborer, and is even better as you can react to opportunities late in a turn as they present themselves. Good VPs also. It can be played anytime, as needed. Royal Palace allows a player to play a noble or production citizen for 2 less resources. This is great with a royal strategy or potentially a production strategy, and can be played anytime. Sorcerer reveals 3 cards from the deck, and the player plays one of them for 2 less resources and discards the rest. At least it has decent VPs, as otherwise it is a completely random stab in the dark. Surveyor reveals 7 cards from the deck, and if any are farms, a player can play them to their estate at no cost. This is situational, but 10 of 156 cards are farms, so the odds of drawing 1 or 2 are pretty good. You might want to check how many are in play and in the discard though, to get a sense of your odds. If none or few are played and you are playing a farmer strategy, it is absolutely worth taking a flyer, as you can get decent VPs either way. Theater draws 5 estate cards and adds any cards to hand that are noble, with a crown symbol, and discard the rest. It is expensive for what it is, but the VPs are great, and it certainly can be worth it if you are pursuing a noble strategy. Wood card allows you to receive 2 wood per forest in all estates. It is a good late game card if using a resource or niche wood strategy. Tower is interesting. Players draw 4 estate cards, dungeon or keep any citizens drawn, and the rest are discarded. While the card's use is luck-based, the VPs provided by this card are good, and it can contribute to either a dungeoning, noble, or royal strategy. And those are the cards. Next up we will take a look at the board spaces. Take the resources you need from the board, as it not only helps you but also denies them to your opponent. Buy your workers as soon as you can, as they will give you the most actions if you build them early. As for the progress cards, the level 1 cards simply provide a mix of resources, with the 2 resources card being clearly the best, as it is the most flexible. The level 2 progress cards are a little more interesting. While 3 resources of any type are welcome, the other card, where cards can be discarded for gold and resources, will synergize nicely with a royal strategy or any strategy that emphasizes card draw. The level 3 progress cards are okay. The first one refreshes the market and allows you to play a card for 1 less resource, which is not that effective, but it could be useful if the circumstances are right. I prefer this one, which allows a play of a card with 2 less resources, which gives one some flexibility and saves an action, as you can play a card right away and you don't need to grab resources first. The level 4 progress cards are both excellent. The first one allows 2 worker actions this turn, and the other one allows trading of resources for gold, also known as victory points. Either can be great, but the one limitation is that a player can only reach that progress level in the last turn of the game or so, which limits their effectiveness overall. And now a quick word about family secrets as we look at them one by one. Get 1 VP for 2 stored resources. This obviously points to a storage strategy. VPs for citizens played. This clearly directs you to follow a royal or noble strategy to make the most of it. Get 1 VP for each production card in the estate. This directs players towards a production strategy. Additional VP for each dungeoned card. This secret can be useless if you don't have much opportunity to dungeon cards. It can also be insanely overpowered if the warden gets it. So follow a dungeoning strategy if the cards allow it. Get 1 VP for each crown card played. This is flexible but is quite strong with royal strategy or noble strategy. Get 1 VP for each scythe card played. Do your best with this one. Get 1 VP for each 2 gold collected. Again, do your best with this one. It helps make cards like the Thief more useful to you. VPs for constructions played. This can work well with any path to victory, but especially a production strategy. Finally, a word about the different character mats and their impact on your game. Warden starts with the dungeon and has the special ability of swapping prisoners or getting a resource to dungeon a card. It kind of forces a dungeoning strategy on you, but you get a clear direction from the beginning of the game, which can be useful. The Druid Lord begins with an innkeep and forest and doubles the effects of forests on your estate. Best for a production strategy, particularly one that focuses on wood. The Pious One starts a player with Place of Worship and increases your card draw by 1. The Warlord starts with the Assassin and Forge, and gets a resource whenever the Assassin is used. This is a bit of a curious mix, but seems to offer a couple of different paths to victory, with dungeoning the likely choice. The Forge offers some flexibility. The sorcerer starts conveniently with the sorcerer and gets an additional resource of any type when gathering resources from an era action. Though the initial sorcerer ability is a one-time use, the extra resources allow for a lot of flexibility. The Spymaster starts with the Royal Consort and Thief, and additionally may copy the effects of another leader. This is situational but quite strong overall, giving the player a lot of flexibility. It generally moves a player towards a royal or noble strategy. The Trade Queen starts with the Merchant and Lumberyard, and can take the effect of the Merchant twice. This is an extremely situational power, as the Merchant can be marginally helpful or extremely helpful depending on what production cards are down. It gets better as the game goes on. Agrarian Lord starts with the Farm and the Quarry, and allows production on one additional card than your capability would normally allow. This is best with a straight production strategy, nothing fancy about it. And this is a full strategic breakdown on how to best utilize the cards, abilities, and opportunities in the game estate, Raise the Realm. Thanks for watching. This is Legendary Tactics.